Jenny was lying on the cold, dirty cement in a sole alleyway. With injuries rendering her unable to move, she cursed the sad situation she'd gotten herself in. Rain began to lightly fall as she struggled to keep her head up, nearing lost consciousness. As Jenny's eyes grew heavier and her vision began to blur, she saw a tall, shadowy figure against the hazy neon lights from the main street. The figure drew near, and Jenny blacked out. It hurts. The pain had woken Jenny up.
Throbbing and aching muscles from her neck to her feet.
Jenny opened her eyes to take a look at the source of the pain, but it was dark. After opening and closing her eyes a few times to make sure they worked, she realized that wherever she was, the lights were out. She felt around her immediate surroundings for some clues. She was laying on something soft. Am I on a bed? Couch? Maybe? While wincing in pain and with tears forming in her eyes, she managed to stand up. Jenny took a step forward, but her legs were unable to support her own weight. She fell to her knees with a thud and a yelp. The room flooded with light as a door creaked open. With the illumination, Jenny was able to see where she was. A small, poorly furnished room that contained no more than a bed, a desk, and a lamp. Before Jenny could take a closer look at anything, she was gently picked up. A tower of a man was holding her in his arms, bride style. Jenny could feel the muscles on him. She knew that she should have been scared, but the gentleness of his touch was reassuring. She looked up to see his face. He had very neat and short black hair that was combed back. His eyes were hidden behind black sunglasses. His other features were sharp and pointed. Jenny was set back on the bed. The man clicked on the lamp that was on the table and sat beside her. In a deep voice, the man asked, "How are you feeling?" "You were roughed up pretty good. If I hadn't found you passed out in that alleyway, who knows what would have happened?" A semblance of a smile crept across his face. Through the hoarseness of her voice, Jenny replied, "It hurts? I don't know how I got here. Everything is kind of a blur." She held her hand to her head, trying to remember and trying to relieve some of the pain from her throbbing headache. The man noticed and presented her with a water bottle. Jenny took the bottle and chugged. She hadn't realized how thirsty she was. Water dribbled from the corners of her mouth and fell onto her lap. It was cold. Jenny looked down and saw that she was naked aside from some bandages. She dropped the bottle, spilling it on the floor, and brought her hands up in a pathetic attempt to cover herself. The man laughed and wrapped his jacket around her. "Sorry about that, but your clothes were ruined. I had to take them off to treat your wounds." "You said you don't remember how you got here? Do you remember how you got hurt?" "I was fighting, I think." Given Jenny's past, it was a well-educated guess. "But who?" "I don't remember what happened, but that's all I know." "I saw what you did. It was pretty incredible. You fight well for a woman. If you weren't caught off guard and hit from behind, I think you could have won that little brawl." The man lit up a cigarette. "I think there were 3 against you. I don't normally bother with back alley tussles, but you were beautiful." "Krav Maga?" He turned to her and held her chin in his hand. "Get some rest and focus on healing." He gently kissed Jenny's forehead and stood up to leave. Before he closed the door, he said, "When you're ready, come find me. I'll make you an offer." Without a window in the room, it was impossible to tell whether it was night or day. Jenny spent most of her time sleeping and recovering. She wondered if anyone was looking for her. She lived alone. Her parents were overseas. She didn't have any friends, so to speak of. Before this incident happened, she was expecting to enter high school in a couple of months. Jenny figured that not much time had passed since she was found by her mystery man. He hadn't made another appearance since he had left her. Jenny had managed to crawl to a small bathroom off to the side when she needed to go. She figured she would just stay in the room until she was confident enough to walk. Every so often, when she would wake up, there would be food and water left for her on the little table. Nothing special, fruits and vegetables. The odd convenience store gimbap, and sometimes canned tuna fish. Jenny was hoping to be up on her feet soon. The words that man had said to her kept repeating in her head. "When you're ready, come find me, I'll make you an offer." An unknown amount of time had passed stuck in the little room. Jenny could feel some of her strength returning. She stood up slowly and tried to take some small steps. It had become easier than before. This time, she managed to make it to the bathroom without falling or stumbling. As she approached her bed, she took a deep breath and let out a long sigh. She turned around to face the door that the man had left through. She placed a clammy hand on the doorknob and turned it. The door opened into a large, brightly lit room. She felt the cool tile beneath her bare feet. She tightened the jacket around her, which thankfully was big enough to reach her knees, covering her important bits. Jenny looked around the room, and in the middle, she saw him lounging lazily in an oversized chair, almost throne-like. He flicked his cigarette and stood up, beaming. "I was wondering when you were going to make your appearance. I was getting a little bored waiting for you." He closed the distance between them and towered over the young girl. "You look cute in my jacket." He brushed aside her dirty HC hair and curled it behind her ear. Jenny grabbed his wrist and pushed it aside. "I have some questions," she started, but was interrupted by the man. "Let's get you cleaned up first." He turned away and beckoned for her to follow. She did and was led to a bathroom. "When you're done with your shower, I have some clothes there for you. Take your time, I'll wait here." He stood just outside the room and lit another cigarette. Jenny stepped into the bathroom. It was quite spacious. There was a large tub in the middle and a shower to the side. It must have been big enough to fit 5 people. On the shelves were towels and a set of clothes that the man had promised. Jenny went to the shower and turned it on. As it warmed, she removed her jacket, neatly folded it, and placed it on the shelf. She carefully removed her bandages, and to her surprise, her wounds were nothing but scars. How long was I in there for? Did someone change my bandages while I slept? She stepped into the water and let out a soft moan. She rubbed soap into her hair and scrubbed her body, washing away the dirt and with it, lifting a weight off of her shoulders. She had a lot of time to think in that room. Her memory of the night of the incident had started to return. The night of the incident in the Seal Alley. The night air was still. It was unusually warm for the beginning of spring. Jenny sighed and put up her hood. I really hope it's not going to rain. She trudged through the street, which had started to come alive with the nightlife. The buzzing neon signs had been turned on. The smell of cigarettes and liquor had started to fill the air. Drunks were appearing on the streets and stumbling aimlessly. Merchants were peddling their cheap street food. It was this time of night that Jenny loved best. She had been wandering for a while, killing time until she was supposed to meet a customer. As shameful as it was, Jenny ran some simple scams, mostly selling knockoff products or blackmailing men. Since she was too young to have a job, she did anything she could to make some money. Jenny felt her phone buzz in her pocket. She took it out and checked the new message. It was from her customer. "I'm here. Hurry up." She was selling him a designer handbag for his girlfriend. This guy seemed like the perfect schmuck. How many boys knew how to tell real handbags from fake ones? Jenny messaged him. "On to the meetup, be there soon." He was a little early and quite pushy, but that was okay. Jenny didn't have much else to do tonight. Jenny had arrived in the alleyway. A guy was crouching, waiting. When Jenny walked up to him, he stood up. "Let's see the bag," he demanded. It was a little forward, but she was used to this kind of situation. "I have the bag here." She showed it to him and handed it over. He grabbed her wrist, making her drop the bag. He twisted her arm and got right in her face. Do you think you're fucking smart? He asked rhetorically. What kind of shit are you trying to pull, huh? He tightened his grasp on the girl. You think I don't know you're selling fakes? You sold my girl a knockoff pair of shoes last week? I came here to teach you a fucking lesson. I'm not afraid to beat the shit out of a girl. To most people, he would have been intimidating. He was probably around 5'9" or 5'10". He was large as well. Jenny could tell that there was muscle under his fat. His eyes were fierce. Jenny was not stupid enough to have not thought this far ahead. The only reason she had felt comfortable scamming these people was that she had trained in Krav Maga. Her parents had made her take classes for self-defense. Growing up in Canada, they were worried about their cute Korean daughter being taken advantage of. Although she didn't feel much love for her parents, she at least appreciated that much. Through force and using her attacker's weight against them, she managed to flip the guy on the ground. It's not very manly of you to strong-arm at. Little girl. She spat on him. Either give me the money or give me back my bag. The guy on the ground growled. You fucking bitch. He raised his fingers to his mouth and gave a short whistle. From the shadows in the alley, 2 more guys approached, cracking their knuckles. So that's how it's going to be? Jenny figured she could probably take on the 1 guy, but she wasn't so sure about 3. However, she didn't have time to back out now. She dropped her belongings and ran towards him. As they brawled for what seemed like an hour, it was never certain who was winning. Looking down on everything that was happening, from a balcony on the main street, was the man who would rescue her. Jenny turned the shower off and stood silently as the water dripped from her body. She gave a stretch, working on her sore muscles. The hot water did wonders, and she felt rejuvenated. She dried off and looked at the clothes that were readied for her. Now Jenny wouldn't consider herself very stylish. She usually preferred comfort above all else. However, even she could see that these clothes were a mess. She decided not to wear the underwear. Something about that just seemed wrong. The man had left her a long tweed skirt that was kind of itchy. The white dress shirt was a few sizes too large, but Jenny figured she didn't have the luxury of complaining. I guess this is as good as anything. Before leaving, she grabbed the jacket that she had left on the shelf. The silky blue fabric felt nice on her skin, and even though it was dirty, it made her feel more comfortable. As she opened the door to the bathroom, steam billowed out. The man was waiting for her like he said he would. Okay, he said, his features turning more serious. Let's talk. They sat across from each other at a large coffee table. The man lifted up a bottle of soju. He poured 1 drink for himself and 1 for Jenny. He went to hand her the glass, but stopped short asking, Wait, how old are you? Jenny took the glass from his hand and responded, Does it really matter? She raised her glass and said, Jianbei, cheers, and they both took a drink. So, Jenny said as she set her glass down, can you at least tell me your name? Mine's Jenny. The man smiled and replied, That's a pretty name. My name is Gun. It's nice to meet you, Gun, and thank you for your help. Gun leaned back on the couch, nursing his soju. I only helped you out for 1 reason. I saw some potential in you. I have an eye for fighters, and I like to collect them. It's been a while since I've seen a woman fight as well as you. No offense. Jenny shrugged her shoulders in a none taken kind of way. Maybe it's that you remind me of someone. Or maybe I've gone soft, but I like to train you. Jenny was taken aback. She never viewed herself as a fighter. She just did what she had to in order to not be looked down on or taken advantage of. She thought about it while sipping her soju. She knew she was a lightweight, but it had felt like forever since she had had a good drink. Her face became a little flushed. I appreciate everything you've done for me, Gun, so don't get me wrong. But I don't really understand what it is that you see in me. I haven't trained since I was young. In the blink of an eye, Gun pounced on Jenny. She threw her drink aside and barely managed to block a punch. The glass smashed on the floor. Jenny jumped up to put some distance between the two. In her bare feet, she nearly missed stepping on the broken glass. She crouched down and picked some up. As Gun came forward again, she threw the glass at him. It's a move she had done before, but she forgot that he was wearing his sunglasses. They traded some more blows, and Jenny became visibly tired. Her previous injuries were inhibiting her. She did her best to keep up, although it looked as though Gun was not tiring. After a while, he stopped and laughed, not too shabby. I think you'll do well. Jenny was panting. What the fuck is wrong with you? She chuckled, though, betraying herself. Gun sat back down and beckoned her to do the same. He took off his sunglasses, revealing his cold, dead-looking eyes and a gnarly scar between them. A shiver went down Jenny's spine. Here's my offer. At the end of the summer, the second semester of J1 high school was starting. Jenny had planned on attending the first semester, but Gun's training put a hold on her education. While walking towards the entrance to her new school, Jenny flexed her newly developed muscles. She looked at her arms. There seemed to be more scars, but her bruises were nearly gone. As she stretched, she thought that was some intense training. Gun is really ruthless. I feel like a new person. There were an incredible amount of students, much more than she had seen. In rural Canada, and they were all chatting away. Jenny caught snippets of the conversations. Some were catching up after a long summer. Some were gossiping about how people had changed over the break. A few were talking about the future of the semester and what was in store. As Jenny walked by a group of girls, she couldn't help but overhear about a new transfer student. Apparently, he was extremely attractive. Jenny wasn't too interested but told herself she'd keep her eye open. Gun was enough for her to look at, even though she was sure that Gun didn't see her in a romantic way, even with all the time they'd spent together training. Jenny was lost in her thoughts of Gun and blushing as she walked into someone. She snapped back to reality to see a guy bowing and apologizing. I'm sorry, I should have been paying attention. Jenny looked the guy over. I wonder if this is the guy that those girls were talking about? He's very handsome. But shy betas aren't really my type. Jenny sneered at the boy. I ran into you. Why are you apologizing? I'm sorry, he said. Jenny groaned. You shouldn't apologize so much. There are people in this world that will walk all over you with an attitude like that. They parted ways as Jenny heard him apologize again. Jenny was told to wait outside of her new classroom in order for the teacher to do an introduction. Apparently, it was a common thing to do in Korea when transferring during the school year. In Canada, she would have just sat in the class and waited for people to notice the new girl. Jenny was called in by the teacher, whom she had met earlier in the week. Mr. Gordon Park. Class, this is the new transfer student, he said in an uninterested tone. Please make sure she feels comfortable in her new school. Would you introduce yourself? Jenny cleared her throat and recited her practiced self-introduction. Hello, my name is Jenny. I look forward to working with you all. She bowed politely and looked up to see the reactions. In front of her was a class full of boys. No, they looked more like men. There was no way these guys could be 15 or 16, right? Amongst them were the toughest-looking guys she had ever seen. Sprinkled throughout were some weirdos. One of them stood out to her particularly. If the description she was given was correct, this was the guy. Yuntae Lee, also known as Tabasco, was it? Please find an empty seat and we can get started. Jenny walked through the sea of students, the majority of them wearing beige coveralls. She decided on the seat next to a weird-looking kid, which was close to Yuntae's. "I'm in M Park," the boy said shyly. The girl nodded and continued to look in Yuntae's direction. What could be so interesting about this guy that Gun would ask her to study him? As the day drew on, lunchtime had approached. Jenny wandered to the cafeteria to get some food. After receiving her tray, she looked for a place to sit. She mostly saw students eating with their classmates within their departments. While pondering, she felt a hand clasp her shoulder. "New girl, let's eat together." Yuntae Lee gave a goofy grin, awaiting a response. Beside him was another boy whose defining feature were his large ears. He gave a sort of apologetic look. Jenny composed herself and flashed a fake, bubbly smile. "Sure, that would be great." Seated at the cafeteria table, the three of them began to eat. "So," started the large-eared teen, "I couldn't help but notice your accent." "Are you foreign?" "I was raised in Canada for most of my life, but both of my parents are Korean." Jenny was wary of disclosing too much information. "What are your names, by the way?" "My name is Jace Park, and this is Vasco." "Vasco?" "I knew it couldn't have been Tabasco. That would be stupid." "And the big ears is Jace." "Noted." Vasco asked excitedly. "You know English? Will you help me study?" Jenny could tell this guy was simple. He must be a good fighter if Gun is interested in him. He had the physique after all. Tall and lean muscular. He had tattoos covering his arms and his chest. He wore the coveralls with the top slightly unzipped, his white muscle shirt beneath. "I can help you," she said coyly. "If you can tell me what that logo is on your outfit." Jenny pointed with her fork to the B. "See on Vasco's coveralls." Vaso turned around to show the whole logo on his back. "This is the Burn Knuckles logo. We beat bad guys." Vasco's face was serious when he turned back. It was actually kind of intimidating. "Are you a crew?" "I've heard about some other crews in the RR, but I never heard of the Burn Knuckles." "Is this why Gun is interested? Is he worried about this crew disrupting his plan, or is he looking to recruit them?" Jace placed his hand on Vasco's shoulder. "We're not a crew or a gang. We're just a bunch of guys who respect Vasco and are willing to fight for him. Most of our members are people who've been beaten by Vasco in the past." "Can I join?" she asked Vasco. "Or do I have to be beaten by you? Either was it sounds like a fun time."
Vasco stared at Jenny intently. "I do not hit girls."
Jace, trying to ease the tension, added, "We don't have any girls in the Burn Knuckles." "I feel like it would cause problems." Jenny shrugged. "Oh, well, at least I tried. If I can't join your club, maybe I could just be your friend." She hit them with the sweetest smile she could muster. Jenny thought of herself as a pretty good actor. Not many guys would be unaffected by her charms. She could tell it had worked by the redness in the boy's face. "I would like to be your friend," Vasco smiled. His face became almost puppy-like. Any of the tension from before had disappeared. Jace was a little more hesitant. "I don't see why not, but we don't really know each other that well. I'm basically married to the Burn Knuckles, so if you cause any problems..." He left the rest to interpretation. "I understand," Jenny said, raising her hands in an "I surrender" kind of way. "Well, I'll see you guys after lunch. I'm gonna go for a walk." She stood up and dropped her lunch tray off before heading for a cigarette, a habit that she had picked up from Gun. She didn't really know where a safe spot would be. She didn't want to cause any trouble at school, as Gun was listed as her guardian. He had enough to deal with, and she didn't think he'd be too happy having to come to the school. Walking down the hallway, a couple was approaching her. The guy was tall and lean, wearing sunglasses and a hat. Next to him was a gorgeous blonde girl. "What is it with everyone wearing sunglasses?" Jenny walked up to the girl and quietly asked her, "Where's the best bathroom for?" Jenny put 2 fingers up to her lips. The girl knew what was up and said, "The girls' bathroom by the architecture department is pretty safe. There aren't any girls in that class." She looked at Jenny's uniform and looked surprised. "Wait, are you in architecture?" Weird. Yeah, it's not really what I would have expected. Jenny adopted a very girly personality to seem friendly. It would be fine if all the guys were attractive, but no. The blonde girl laughed. "You're funny. My name's Mary Kim and this is Vin Jin?" Jenny smiled and introduced herself. Vin Jin shoved his phone toward Jenny. "Give me your number," he said, obviously trying to seem cool. Jenny was caught off guard. No one had really asked for her number before. She used to be pretty unattractive when she was younger, but filled out and grew to be pretty stunning. She couldn't help but blush a little. She entered her number and handed it back to him. "You're lucky I have a thing for sunglasses. I'll see you around, and thanks for the tip, Mary." Jenny headed for the bathroom, already exhausted from her first day. Left behind, Mary punched Vin Jin's arm. "I don't believe it. I never thought that would actually work, you dummy." "Honey, I'm home," Jenny joked as she entered Gun's place. She took off her shoes and put on her slippers. She walked into the kitchen, on her way, dropping her heavy backpack to the ground with a thud. She opened the fridge and grabbed a beer. Cracking it open and taking a drink, she rounded the corner to the living room. Who the fuck assigns homework on the first day? In the living room, Gun was sitting with Goo. Jenny wasn't the biggest fan of the blonde-haired eccentric. "Hello, Jenny. It's been a while. I've missed you." He winked at her, slightly grossing her out. "It's always nice to see you two, Goo," she said sarcastically. Jenny had met Goo when she first started training with Gun. Right from the get-go, she didn't find him amusing. He was the complete opposite of Gun. The only thing they had in common was their tenacity and love of money. Gun turned to Jenny and said, "Can you leave us? I have some business to discuss with Goo. And stop drinking so much, you're underage. You should be doing your homework." "Okay, Daddy," she said suggestively and wandered off to her room. Goo gave Gun a shove, teasing him for how red his face had become. The young girl set her beer onto her writing desk and flopped onto the bed, decompressing. It had been a while since she attended school and forgot how draining it could be. She thought about all the people she had met so far. Vasco and Jace, they seemed like genuinely nice people. Jenny wondered if she should try to test them. Mary and Vin Jin were interesting as well. Mary seemed like she could be a good girlfriend, and Vin Jin was cute. She sat up and finished her beer while scrolling through social media on her phone. Feeling a little buzzed, she went to the bathroom. "On her way," Goo shouted from the front door. "Goodbye, Jenny. See you around." "Bye." Jenny finished her business in the bathroom, and when she walked out, she bumped into Gun. He looked down on her with a stern face. "You're not funny." "Don't call me that again. It's inappropriate." It took Jenny a second to realize what he was talking about. "What? You don't want me to call you Daddy?" Gun started to blush, but he was also angry. "I'm sorry. I was just trying to tease you." Jenny frowned and averted her gaze. She really didn't like seeing Gun angry. He sighed. "I'll forgive you this time, but only if you make us something to eat." "I'm starving." Jenny's phone started to ring, but before she could see who it was, Gun grabbed the phone and answered it. "Who is this? Why are you calling her?" "No, I'm not her dad." "No, I'm not her boyfriend either." "She's busy." Gun hung up the phone and handed it back. Then he stormed off. The girl looked at her phone, wondering who could have called. Unknown number? She went to the kitchen and put on her apron, ready to start dinner. She called the number back, staying quiet in case Gun overheard. The line connected and she heard a boy's voice. "Is this Jenny?" he asked. "Yeah? Can I ask whose number this is?" "It's Vin Jin from earlier today. You gave me your number." "Shit, I'm so sorry, Vin. That was my friend who answered the phone." "Did you have something to say to me?" Jenny asked while turning on the stove. "Yeah, we should hang out tonight." Jenny peeked her head around the corner to see Gun was listening. "Sure," she replied. "I haven't really gone out in a while. I'm just making dinner right now, but I'll text you when I'm done." "Okay, peace." She hung up the phone and continued with dinner. When it was done, she ate quietly with Gun. "This is really good, Jenny," he said. Jenny set down her fork and asked Gun bluntly, "Why did you answer my phone like that?" "I don't trust an unknown number. And I don't trust boys calling you after school." "Who was he?" "He was just some guy I met at school today." "Wait, are you jealous?" Jenny asked with a smile. "Don't flatter yourself," Gun responded flatly. "I'm just trying to look after you. You're valuable to my business." Jenny was a little hurt. She had thought Gun would have seen her as more than just a pawn. She cleaned up her dish and said, "I'm going out. I've lost my appetite." As she stood up, Gun grabbed her wrist. "Don't do anything stupid," he said sternly, then let her go. It was humid. Jenny looked at her phone to see if Vin had messaged her. The last text she had received was from a few minutes earlier, telling her to meet him at a park nearby. Jenny had regretted not finishing her dinner as her stomach growled. She decided to stop at a convenience store on the way. She opened the door and heard the bell ding. She started to browse the shelves. She was looking for some beef jerky, one of her favorite snacks in Canada. She was having a hard time finding it, so she asked the attendant. The kid behind the counter looked to be her age. He was squat and chubby with thick glasses. "Do you sell beef jerky?" The boy seemed very helpful, pointing her in the right direction. Jenny grabbed a container of it. She was used to seeing it in little bags. She also grabbed a can of beer from the fridge. She went to ring up her purchase when the boy asked her for ID. Jenny leaned over the counter, exposing her cleavage, and asked as sweetly as she could, "I left it at home. Can't you let it slide just this once?" She looked at his name tag, Daniel. The boy turned beet red and stammered, I'm sorry, but I might get in tea trouble." Jenny sighed, defeatedly. Well, it was worth a try." "Just the jerky, then." She paid and left, heading toward the park. She arrived and sat at one of the benches, eating her beef jerky. She checked her phone and texted Vin here, "Where are you?" Before she could read his response, Jenny heard some male voices coming from behind her. Suddenly, she felt a hand on her shoulder. "Hey, cutie, want to hang out with us?" She turned to see a stranger about her age. He was big and accompanied by 3 other boys. They were all smoking, snickering, and cursing to each other. "Sorry," Jenny replied. "I'm waiting for my boyfriend. He's running a little late." Hopefully that will make them leave. "I don't want to deal with this right now." The girl smiled sweetly at them in an attempt to dissuade them. It apparently didn't help as the big guy grabbed her hair and pulled her head back. He was standing behind the bench, bending her neck backward so that he was looking right at her, above her. "Don't be like that. We can have some fun before he gets here." The guy leaned in close for a Spider-Man-style kiss. Jenny brought her head up quickly, smashing her forehead into his nose. He stumbled backwards, clutching his face. "You bitch! You broke my nose!" The guys behind him were looking to step in, flicking their cigarettes away, trying to look menacing. Jenny stood up and turned to look at them, making sure the bench served as a wall. She couldn't believe what she saw. Vin Jin had jumped in and started beating the shit out of the guys. He seemed like a monster, ruthless, like Gun. Jenny tried to step in because the way she saw it, this was like overkill. She didn't want to get into any trouble. The four men lay groaning on the ground. Jenny tried to step in because the way she saw it, this was like overkill. She didn't want to get into any trouble. The four men lay groaning on the ground. Jenny grabbed Vin's hand and urged him along. "That's enough, let's go." As they put some distance between them, Jenny spoke. "Thank you for helping me, but I would have been fine alone." She realized she was still holding his hand. She pulled away, blushing. If it wasn't so dark out, she could have sworn he was too. Vin tried to explain himself. "I've seen those guys causing trouble before. They're just some gangster wannabes who think they can get away with anything because their leader's big." If I would have met them in middle school? They continued their walk for a while, chatting idly. "So why the architecture department?" Vin eventually asked. Jenny replied, "Well, I didn't really care which department I went in, but I'm pretty good with my hands. Had I known the class was full of weirdos, maybe I would have joined vocal like you. I'm a decent singer." Vin scoffed. "I can't stand that Vasco guy." "He's all right," she replied. "He's just a retard." Maybe she could have come up with a better word. He was simple, sure, but retard rolled off her tongue before she could stop herself. They laughed together and continued chatting. They stopped at a bench on the riverside. "My feet are killing me. Can we sit down for a bit?" Jenny groaned as she sat down. Vin sat beside her. He reached into his bag and pulled out 2 beers. Jenny's face lit up and Vin smiled. She told him, "I actually tried to buy some at the convenience store earlier, but I got ID'd." They opened their cans and took a sip. Jenny rested her head on Vin's shoulder. "It's been so long since I've relaxed like this." Vin wrapped his arm around the girl. They sipped and chatted some more. Eventually, Vin's hand started to wander and felt up her breast. Maybe it was the beer, the fact that she was a little angry with Gunn, or maybe that she hadn't had such a gentle touch like this before, but she let it happen. Jenny moaned softly into Vin's ear and kissed his neck lightly. After a long while of kissing and touching, above the belt, they looked at each other huffing, teenage hormones out of control. "I think we should stop for today," Vin said. Jenny was a little disappointed, but welcomed the easy out, should things go too far. She gave him one last peck on the cheek and he offered to walk her home. The next day at school, Jenny yawned during class. She had been up too late last night, unable to sleep after her date. When Vin had dropped her off, Gunn was nowhere to be seen. It wasn't unusual for him to be gone at weird hours. She wondered why he had been so mad yesterday. She didn't even see him this morning. Jenny's thoughts were interrupted when Mr. Park shoved a paper at her. "Not bad, Jenny. Highest mark in the class." Jenny looked at the paper, her homework she had handed in at the beginning of the day. In the top right corner was a red circle with 79%. She had completed her homework as quickly as she could when she first arrived, having forgotten to do it last night. "This is the top mark? This class really is full of idiots." "Thank you, Mr. Park. Might I be excused to go to the washroom?" He nodded. On the way to the washroom, Jenny checked her text messages. She hadn't heard from Vin since they parted ways the night before. Still nothing. She passed by a group of guys loitering in the hall. One of them said, "Did you hear about that guy from Vocal?" "I heard he's in the hospital." "Apparently, he got the shit kicked out of him." Another boy shook his head. "Really? He's pretty strong, though." A third spat on the ground. "Good riddance, that fucking bully." Jenny's heart sank. She turned around and asked, "Are you guys talking about Vinjin?" "Oh, yeah, that's his name." "Where did you hear that?" she asked. The first guy said, "I overheard Mary Kim talking to her friend." Jenny headed over to the vocal department. She looked through the window and waved to try and get Mary's attention. The blonde girl saw the look on Jenny's face and rushed out. Mary, what happened to Vin Jin? Jenny asked. Mary shook her head. I don't really know what happened, but he's in the hospital right now. I'm going after school to visit him. Do you want to come? After school, Jenny waited at the front gate for Mary. She looked at her phone, still nothing from Vin. Vasco and Jace approached her. Is everything okay? Jace asked. You don't look so good. Jenny smiled at the boys. I'm okay, thanks for asking. I just met a friend yesterday and now he's in the hospital, so I'm trying to figure out what happened. She didn't want to worry them. I'm on my way to the hospital now, actually. I'm just waiting for someone. Jace asked, do you mean Vin Jin from the vocal department? Everyone is talking about it. Vasco cut in. He is a bad guy. He bullies the weak. You should not be friends with him. Jenny frowned. That's not the first time I've heard that. I don't know him that well, to be honest. I appreciate your concern, though. Mary arrived? Are you ready to go? Jenny said goodbye to Vasco and Jace and accompanied Mary to the hospital. At the front desk, they were given directions to Vin's room. Jenny gasped at the sight of Vin. His face was bandaged, and he had a cast on his left arm and leg. When Vin saw her, he became angry. He shouted, "Get the fuck out of here! This is all your fault." Jenny took a step back. What are you talking about? Mary grabbed his good hand in an attempt to calm him down. He slapped her hand away and pointed at Jenny. Listen, I don't know who the fuck that sunglasses guy was or what he is to you, but I don't want to be involved with you. Get the fuck out! Without a word, Jenny left, tears forming in her eyes. She blinked them away, but they wouldn't stop. It had to have been Gun. Why would he do this, though? All the way home, Jenny's rage grew. She didn't know what Gun was ever thinking. Standing outside the door to Gun's place, she wiped her tears. At first, she was confused, but now she was just angry. Before she could go in, Gun had opened the door from the inside. He saw the tears and how red her eyes were. He sighed, pulled her into his embrace, and whispered, "Let's talk." Sitting at the coffee table in the living room, neither of them said a word. Gun lit a cigarette and took a long drag, exhaling a cloud of smoke. I didn't send you to that school to fool around. Don't forget what you're here for. If it weren't for me, you'd be dead. I thought you'd show me a little more respect. Perhaps I've been too lenient. Jenny crossed her arms. Did you do that to Vin? He didn't do anything wrong. He's a disrespectful little shit. I put him in his place. I know his type. Trust me, he was bad news. Sooner or later, you would have gotten hurt. I can take care of myself. You know I'm strong. I've proved it. Gun laughed. I'm not talking about that. You're Navi. He put out his cigarette and walked over to Jenny. He looked down at her, smiling wickedly. He put his hands on either side of her head against the couch, trapping her. He leaned in slowly and kissed her neck. Jenny was shaking out of fear. Gun took his hand and placed it on her throat, a little too tightly. He whispered, "Is this what you want?" Huh? I bet you like it. With his other hand, he unbuttoned her shirt,
rubbing the smooth skin of her stomach and sides, sending goosebumps along her body.
Jenny was crying, gasping for air. Please, stop. She clutched the wrist that was pressing on her windpipe. She dug her nails in, but he didn't budge. He tightened his grip. Did you think I would stop because you asked me politely? He laughed. Men aren't that nice. He nibbled on her earlobe, his hot breath on her neck. Jenny was squirming by this point, barely able to breathe. He whispered in her ear, "Don't you ever fucking do something like that behind my back again? You belong to me." He let go of her neck with a shove. There was nothing else Jenny could do but cough, clutching her neck, tears streaming down her face. She wanted to run, but she was paralyzed with fear.
Gun placed his hand, gently cupping her cheek, wiping away a tear with his thumb. Think hard about what I've said.
He left the room. She ran to the bathroom and threw up. She had never been that scared before. Jenny turned the shower on. She felt dirty. The water ran down her back as she sat on the floor, the sound of the shower drowning out her cries. After a while, she had run out of tears. She dried off and went to bed. Sleep came easily to the exhausted girl. Later that night, Gun slowly opened Jenny's door. He set a plate of food on her writing desk. He sat on the bed next to the sleeping girl. He gently shook her awake. I brought you some dinner. You need to eat. I'm not going to apologize for earlier. You need to be taught some respect. I'm not your friend, but I'm not your enemy either. Clean up when you're done eating. I'm going out tonight. I'll see you tomorrow. Jenny wasn't hungry, but she forced herself to eat the measly meal. She didn't want to make Gun angrier. Thinking about it, she could understand him a little bit. Maybe she was taking advantage of him. He did save her after all. She didn't have time for friends or lovers. She had accepted the terms of Gun's offer, knowing this in the back of her mind. She needed a reality check. Jenny decided she would forgive Gun for his actions. She knew it wasn't right, but she didn't want to cause any more problems for him. Jenny cleaned up her dishes and the ones in the kitchen as well. She did some tidying around the house. It was getting quite late, but Jenny decided she would go out and get some groceries. At the convenience store, she bought some essentials and things she thought Gun might like. She was willing to do anything that might put him in a better mood. On the way home, she lit a cigarette. Jenny rubbed her neck. It was a little sore. She saw a familiar face on her travels. A man running toward her, out for a nighttime jog. It was Vasco. He stopped in front of her. She greeted him. Hey, Vasco, out for some fresh air? He slapped the cigarette out of her hand. Do not smoke. It is bad for you. He looked closer and grabbed her shoulders. Who hurt you? Was it your friend? Jenny rubbed her neck. She hadn't looked at it, but she figured that Gun had left a mark. No, Vasco, it wasn't him. I'm fine, so you don't have to worry about me. She smiled, but Vasco could see through it. You are my friend. If I can't protect you, I can't call myself a man. I will walk you home.